Okay, so today we're going to be taking a look at a MacBook Air. This is an A1932, and you can see here this one actually has a cracked screen. We have a bunch of lines going through the screen. We have this bottom bezel glass piece is just completely missing. And actually, if we close the laptop, hopefully you'll be able to see, but there's actually like an impact point where something at some point has hit the laptop, or it almost looks like somebody drilled into it, which is always crazy because we have never seen that before. But either way, first thing we're going to want to do is turn off the laptop, which we will do now. And I'm just going to hold down the power button to turn it completely off. Okay, screen's gone black, so we're going to shut the screen. We're going to flip the laptop over, and we have a few bottom screws here, so I'll zoom in hopefully so you can see it just a little bit better. And we're just going to want to start by removing these bottom screws. So we have 4 up here on the top, 4 down here on the bottom, and 2 on the sides. For this, you're going to need a Pentalobe P5 screwdriver bit. We use an iFixit kit which has these bits, and we're just going to remove them one by one. It's always a good idea to have a screw organizer tray if you have one, because there are different screw sizes, so to be sure that you have put them back in correctly, the right screw in the right hole, it's a good idea to keep track of where each one goes, because there are some that are longer than the others, and that can present problems when you try to go put them back in, and one is too long, one is too short, and you might get yourself confused. So we'll continue removing these bottom screws. And now that we have the bottom screws off, we can simply remove the bottom. This could be a little bit tricky, but what you're going to want to do is use your fingernail or a pry tool. If you have a guitar pick, that might be better. Pry in between this bottom piece, and you should be able to basically pull the bottom of the laptop off like so. Now we have access to all of the internals, and it looks like this screen has actually already been replaced before because it has some sticker on it. But before we do anything else, we want to disconnect the battery to make sure we don't accidentally short out any components when we're taking the screen connector off or anything like that, and potentially cause damage to other parts of the machine. So to avoid that, we're going to want to remove the battery. So we're going to need to lift up this little plastic flap here and remove the battery connector. And to do that, we can use our fingernail or a pry tool and pull that straight out like so. And I should be able to pull that out. And that is the battery connector. So now the battery is disconnected from the machine. There is a tiny little button here that will actually make sure that all the power is gone from the machine. So what we're just going to do is use a screwdriver or something, press down on that button there for about 10 seconds or so. And now that we've done that, there is no power remaining in the machine. Now we can actually start removing the screen. So we're going to switch screwdrivers to a Torx T4 screw size, and we're going to want to remove this little cover that protects the Wi-Fi antennas. So there's 2 screws for this. They're both the same size, but they're very tiny, so keep track of those. We have those 2, and then we have this cover that came off, and the 2 wireless antenna wires. We want to remove these. So to do that, we are just going to lift them straight up like so, and those are removed. Now we need to remove the antenna bracket, so we will keep the same T4 screwdriver bit, and we will remove the 4 screws on this metal, on these 2 metal pieces on both sides. Like so. And now we will take off the cover over top of the actual screen connector itself. Once again, same screw size, the T4. There's 2 in opposite corners, and this little shield should come right off like that. And now you should be able to disconnect the screen. So to do that, we're just going to use our guitar pick, and we're going to pry underneath that connector, and we should be able to, with a little bit of torque, disconnect that screen there. Now we're going to want to remove the two screws in these two black screws here in the middle, and this also holds the antenna bar to the laptop, so we'll need to remove both of those as well. Those two are now removed, so now this, you can see that this is sort of loose. We should be able to lift this up. Now be careful because the screen wires are still in, so what we need to do is, to be able to remove those, we need to lift this up like so, and then pull the cables out. So now we have this antenna bar removed. Put that off to the side. Now we can actually remove the hinges, and then we can pull the screen out. So this one's actually not too challenging. We're going to use a T9 Torx bit for this, and we're just going to remove two of the hinge screws on both sides, because we're going to need to open the laptop to be able to take it out. So we'll just remove two screws. I'll leave the center one in on both sides. So you can see what I did was I left this screw in here, I left this screw in here, but I removed these two and those two right there. So now with that done, we're going to open the laptop up on a 90-degree angle like so, and we are going to remove those remaining screws. Hopefully I can sort of show this, but I'm going to remove those two screws now while the laptop is on that open to that 90-degree angle. And I can show you now that I've removed all the screws, and now at this point it's a little good idea to be careful because the screen is sort of just laying in there like so. And to remove it, it should be just as simple. What we're going to want to do, if I can get this to focus, is to just pull this out. Might be a little bit tricky, but you should be able to remove the screen. Sometimes these hinges don't play nicely, so you might have to open the screen a little bit more than normal, but should eventually come out. Okay, now I got the screen out like so, so that's the old screen. We can set that off to the side. And we have our new screen here. So just like we took the other one off, we're going to put the new one on in a similar way. For the new screen, make sure that the new screen is actually has its hinges on the same sort of angle, like this one is, where it's at that 90-degree angle there, and that will help you put it back into the case. If it's not at a 90 degree like that, it will be very difficult to actually get it back into the chassis of the machine. So just like we took the other one off, we'll put this one back on, and it's pretty simple, but it's a little bit, might be difficult for me to show on camera, but I should be able to show it. You can see that that's sitting in there now, and the other side, and now they're just laying in there like that. And obviously make sure that this this cable is on here and not being pinched between the actual keyboard side. So at this point, what I like to do is to just use my fingers to hold the hinges in place, and then close the laptop, and just like so. And now we can put those hinge screws back on. Which we had 3 on each side. I'll only put 1 in on each side, and the reason I'm going to do that is to make sure that the rest of the case is aligned. So now that we have 2 in, just make sure that the top and bottom pieces are aligned together. This one is aligned perfectly, so we don't need to adjust anything, but if it's not aligned, you can loosen these 2 screws and sort of adjust the top and the bottom to make sure that they align. But this one looks perfect, so we'll go ahead and finish off putting these screws back in. Putting the other 2 on this side right here. Okay, now that that's done, we can start putting this antenna bar back in. Just like we took it out, we're going to have to feed this piece back in. So we will need to basically push this through like so, kind of put this at an angle, and it's going to go in this hole here, so we'll just slide that in like so, and then lay that back down in there. Okay, now that that's done, we can start putting all the screws back in. So we're going to switch back to our T4 Torx screwdriver and start putting these screws in one by one. Again, it doesn't really matter which way you put these in, so I'm going to start with the ones that give the antenna bar a little bit of stability. so that it'll be a little bit easier for us to move some stuff around. And I will put the screw back in, hopefully. Okay. Let me try. Try that again. Okay, there we go. So that screws back in. I will put these 4 back in, these longer black screws, which were used for the metal piece right here. Back in. And finally the last one for that side. And now that those are in, we can connect the screen back together. So just like they came out, we can kind of just line this up and press down. You should hear that clip into place. Put some extra pressure on it, make sure it's fully seated into the connector, and then we can put that little cap or the metal shield back on, and those 2 tiny screws, put those back in, make sure I have the correct T4 screwdriver, and put that back in like so. It came out, and then we have one more right there, and that's back in. So now we can plug the antennas back in. So we have this wire right here, and just like these came out, same way they go back in. So you pretty much just align them with the metal ring, and then you can just push down, and you should hear them click into place if everything goes well. And so I will sort of align those, push down, put one in, and this can be a little finicky, so it might take a few seconds to actually get these in correctly, but once you get them in, they should be in there good. And just like that, they're in. Put this little shield back on, and our 2 T4 screws. And these screws are very tiny, so it can be quite difficult to get them back in. So just keep that in mind if you're struggling to get them back in. You're definitely not alone in that, because as I just did, it has jumped from me. So let me find that real quick. Okay, so I got those 2 screws in for the cover there, and now at this point we can plug the battery back in. So we'll lift that little piece of plastic up and slide this connector in like so. Push that in there, it should click, and then we can tape that back down and put the bottom of the laptop back on just by laying it in like that. Now before we put the screws in, we want to make sure that the laptop actually works and that the screen functions correctly, so we'll flip that over, open the laptop and turn it on just to be sure that it is working correctly and the screen picture is good. Just do that now. So let's see, hopefully. Now sometimes when you replace the screen on some of these MacBooks, due to having the battery unplugged, it will need to be plugged back in order to actually show a picture and boot. In this case, it looks like that might be the case. So I'm going to get a charger and plug it in, and then we will check it again. Okay, so we have our charger here, so I'll plug the laptop in and put that around, and we will try to turn it on now. And hopefully, if everything went well, we should get a picture on the screen. Power button there. Okay, so now the machine has sat for a little bit plugged in for about 30 seconds. We do have an image on the screen, and the image looks good. we'll wait for it to get to the login screen, and then the job should be pretty much complete. I'm just covering that just in case the username comes up. I don't want to leak any of their customers' information. But with that being said, we can put the bottom screws back in, and then this job is pretty much all done. So don't know why it's taking so long to get into macOS, but I guess we'll wait for it and see. Hopefully it will load in here in a second. Might have been in the middle of an update when we shut it down, so that would make sense. Went to Recovery Assistant for some reason, but I'll restart, and then the laptop should be pretty much ready to go. So we'll throw the bottom screws in, and that will conclude the video. With that being said, flip it over now, and I'll actually show putting those back in. Switch back over to our Pentaload P5 bit. Let's see. Pentaload P5, and put these screws back in. And just, you know, try to remember exactly where they went, because you don't want to put the wrong screw in the wrong hole. That in mind. Again, there were 4 screws on the top, 4 on the bottom, and 2 on the side. So there's 1 on each side. Just screw all of these back into place. Time. Okay, just like that, the whole laptop is back together now. So I'll just double check, and you can see we are in macOS and everything is looking good. So that was how to do a screen assembly replacement on a MacBook Air A1932. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you like the video, hit like, and of course subscribe for more videos in the future.